She remembered that morning, down to the smallest detail: gray light coming through the window, the smell of coffee she'd managed to brew before he started packing his things, the sound of the zipper on his bag, sharp, final, like a verdict being read aloud, and his face. He was smiling. Not the smile she'd seen at the very beginning, the one that used to knock the air right out of her chest. This was a different smile, light, almost relieved, like someone who'd finally finished a book they found boring and was glad to close the cover. She stood in the kitchen doorway, mug in both hands, and watched him. And in that moment, quietly, almost without a sound, something inside her broke. Not her heart. No, a broken heart feels different. This was deeper, something for which we don't really have a simple, clean word. She understood, for the first time, clearly and completely. He had never actually seen her. All those years, all those conversations until 3 in the morning, all the tears she wiped away, his tears, all the sacrifices that felt, at the time, like chosen acts of love. He had been looking straight through her, every single time, and now he was gone, and she was standing there with a cooling cup of coffee and a soul that felt completely, utterly hollow. This is a story about what happens when a narcissist breaks the unspoken soul contract with an empath, about how it begins, how it destroys, and most importantly, what's left behind when it's over. You might recognize someone in this story, or you might recognize yourself. Her name was Anna, though honestly, it could be anything. Maya, Sarah, Rachel, Jen. This story repeats itself with frightening precision. Only the names change. Anna was 28 when she met him at a company party. He walked into the room like someone who already knew everyone would turn to look. And they did. Marcus had a gift, a specific, almost uncanny gift, for making you feel like the only person in the room. Within the first few minutes, Anna had this strange sensation that he'd known her for years. He asked the right questions. He listened. God, the way he listened. He leaned forward slightly, looked her directly in the eyes, nodded at exactly the right moments. "You're the first person who actually gets that," he said to her about something. She can't even remember what it was about now, but she remembers how it sounded, like a key turning in a lock. "Here's what you need to understand about empaths, and I want you to take this seriously. This isn't just a trendy Instagram psychology term. An empath is someone who literally, physically feels other people's pain. Not metaphorically, for real. When someone nearby is sad, an empath feels a heaviness in their chest. When someone is angry, an empath's shoulders tense up. This isn't a choice. It's not a weakness. It's a feature of the nervous system that makes you extraordinarily attuned to the emotional world around you. And it comes with a price. Empaths learn from childhood to read the mood of a room before they even walk into it. They can sense their mother's distress while still on the stairwell outside the apartment. They know how to soothe people who won't even admit they're upset. They carry other people's emotions with the same weight as their own. Now picture a narcissist, someone who, beneath a polished magnetic surface, carries an enormous and insatiable emptiness. He needs admiration. He needs validation. He needs someone to constantly fill him from the inside. And then these two people meet. This is not a coincidence. This is gravity. A narcissist instinctively senses an empath in a crowd, the way an experienced predator senses something. Not because he's plotting. It's simply that His internal system is wired to seek out people who can give him what he needs. And an empath is a perfect source. And the empath? The empath sees the pain in the narcissist. Real pain. Deep pain. That very emptiness. Here is someone who needs me. Here is someone I can heal. That's what she thinks. Two people, two needs, a perfect match. That slowly destroys one of them. The first months with Marcus, Anna described as the happiest time of her life. And that was the truth. Not an illusion, not a trick of memory, genuine happiness. He texted her at 3 in the morning just because he'd seen something that reminded him of her. He remembered she hated cilantro and quietly picked it out of her food. He listened to her for hours about her childhood, her fears, the dreams she'd never told anyone else. He said, "With you, I finally feel like myself." Anna melted completely. This is called love bombing, and it is the first stage. The narcissist isn't doing this out of conscious, calculated cruelty. It's simply what he does best. Give someone exactly what they're starving for, because he listened so carefully, because he remembered everything she said. This isn't love. This is a mirror. Do you understand what makes this so devastating? The empath shares her values, her dreams, her fears, openly, honestly, vulnerably, because that's how an empath is built. She gives herself away freely, and the narcissist uses that information to become perfect, not because he is those things, but because now he knows exactly what to appear to be. Anna dreamed of a man who would truly hear her. Marcus heard every word. Anna was terrified of loneliness. Marcus was always, always there. Anna valued honesty above everything else. Marcus said, "I've never been able to lie. I just don't know how." He became her own dream, reflected directly back at her. And that's exactly why it hurts so much when it falls apart. Because when it crumbles, it doesn't feel like losing a person. It feels like losing a version of yourself. Let me ask you something, and drop it in the comments if you feel like it. Have you ever had that feeling with someone? That sensation that this person understands you better than you understand yourself? That with them, you could finally just breathe? That feeling matters, because it might be the most important question in everything we're talking about today. Anna didn't notice when things started to change. It's rarely obvious. There's no moment where the narcissist sits down across from you and announces, "All right, enough pretending. Now I'm going to slowly dismantle you." It would almost be easier if there were. Instead, small things, things so small that each one on its own has a perfectly reasonable explanation, a way to justify it, a reason to let it go. One evening, he commented on her laugh. "You get so loud when you're nervous. You know that?" Not mean, delivered like an observation. But at the next party, Anna caught herself covering her mouth with her hand when something made her laugh. Then, her friend Olivia, "She doesn't appreciate you. You see that, right? She's just using you." Anna pushed back. He shrugged. "I'm just saying what I see. You do whatever you want." 6 months later, she and Olivia barely spoke. No fight, no dramatic ending. It just happened. Then, her career. "You give too much of yourself to people who don't deserve it." He said it so gently, so protectively. Anna heard it as, "He's thinking about me. He's watching out for me. He loves me." This is called gaslighting, and isolation, and the gradual rewriting of reality. But here's the most terrifying part. The narcissist doesn't necessarily do this out of cruelty. He does it because he needs to control his source. An empath with real friendships, with a career she loves, with a solid sense of who she is. That empath can leave. That empath can choose herself. But an empath who has quietly lost everything outside of this relationship, that empath clings to it like a life raft. And here's the tragedy inside the tragedy. The empath, sensing that something is wrong, responds by trying harder. It's in her nature. If there's not enough love, give more love. If the partner is suffering, give more of yourself. The empath is literally wired to meet another person's pain with care, and the narcissist is wired to accept that care and ask for more. There's a joke, not a funny one, but an accurate one. An empath in a relationship with a narcissist is like someone trying to fill a colander with water. They pour and pour and pour. The water disappears. They think, I must not be pouring enough. So they pour harder. And the colander thinks, yes, good, more. Anna started to change, slowly, invisibly, even to herself. She became quieter. She laughed less. That loud, unguarded laugh. She saw her friends less often, because every time she went out, she'd come home to a version of him that required 2 days of careful, emotional maintenance to smooth back over. It was easier to just stay. She started measuring every sentence before she spoke it. Not because he hit her, nothing like that, but because certain words created a mood. And when he was in a mood, the entire apartment became a field of tension she could feel on her skin. This is what happens to an empath inside a toxic relationship. She stops being herself. She becomes an antenna tuned to one single frequency, his. And one morning you look in the mirror and you genuinely cannot remember, what did I used to love before him? What made me laugh? What did I care about? Who was I? If you're reading this and thinking, this is me, pause for just a second. Can you remember yourself before this relationship? Can you name 3 things that used to bring you joy that have quietly disappeared? That's not a rhetorical question. That's an important one. Write it down for yourself. Not for him, not for anyone else, for yourself. This is where it starts. Not with a dramatic exit, with remembering. Anna didn't immediately understand what was happening the night everything shifted. They were at dinner with his friends. She'd told a story, something from her childhood, a funny memory, the kind of thing that normally made people warm up to her instantly. And it worked. His friends laughed. The table relaxed. Marcus waited until they were in the car. You always make yourself the center of attention, he said. No anger in his voice. Just that calm, flat tone she'd come to dread more than shouting. It's embarrassing. You do this every time we go out. Anna opened her mouth, closed it, tried to remember if what he was describing had happened. Had she done something wrong? Had she been too much? I was just telling a story. I was just telling a story, she said out loud. He didn't answer. He turned on the radio, and she spent the rest of the drive home running through every word she'd said, trying to find where she'd gone wrong. This is the moment that almost every empath in this situation describes the same way. The moment they stopped trusting their own perception of reality. It's called the soul contract, this invisible agreement between 2 people. The terms are never spoken out loud, but they're felt. I will be open with you. I will show you who I am, and you will treat that with care. When a narcissist breaks that contract, they don't do it loudly. They do it through 1,000 small betrayals of that trust, until the empath starts to believe that the problem is them, that they're too sensitive, too loud, too much, not enough. And the cruelest part? The empath starts doing the narcissist's work for him. She begins to self-correct, self-erase, self-diminish, without being asked. There is a specific kind of grief that comes with this moment. It's not the grief of losing someone. It's the grief of losing yourself while still standing in the same room as the person who helped it happen. Psychologists sometimes call it ambiguous loss. You're grieving someone who is still physically present. You're mourning the person you were before, and that person feels far away, behind glass, impossible to reach. The moment she stopped being able to finish a sentence without checking his face first was the moment she knew something had gone very wrong. She just didn't have the words for it yet. This is what that erasure looks like. Quiet, invisible, and happening in plain sight. If any part of this felt familiar, stay, because this is where we start to find our way back. And so, we come back to where we started. A gray morning, the sound of the zipper on a bag, his smile, light and easy, like setting down something heavy. Anna had spent the entire previous week sensing it coming. That particular electricity in the air, that meant something was shifting. Her empath's nervous system had been on high alert, scanning constantly, trying to figure out how to fix whatever was wrong before it became unfixable. But this time there was nothing to fix. He was simply done. The source had run low. Whatever the calculation was, it had changed. And so he left, with a smile, like setting down something heavy. That was what his face looked like. Relief. Here's what I want you to understand about the moment of the breakup. Because this is where most people outside the situation get it wrong. They think the empath should feel relief. And sometimes she does, briefly. A strange, disorienting lightness, like realizing you'd been holding your breath for 2 years, and you can finally exhale. But then comes the crash, because the empath doesn't just grieve the relationship. She grieves the version of him she believed in, the one from the first months, the one who felt like a key in a lock, the one who made her feel seen for the very first time. That person felt so real, so specific, so perfectly shaped to fit the exact contours of her longing, and she has to grieve him, even while knowing, intellectually, that he was never quite real at all. That grief is one of the loneliest kinds there is. There's a line that therapists who specialize in narcissistic abuse tend to say, and the first time you hear it, it sounds almost comically simple. You didn't fall in love with him. You fell in love with the mirror he held up to you. Which, okay, yes, that's poetic and true. But it also doesn't make the 2 a.m. part any easier. If you've been through something like this, or if you're in it right now, I want you to do something. Just one thing. Think of one person in your life you pulled away from during this relationship. One friend, one family member, one person who used to make you feel like you. Think about whether reaching back out to them might be possible. You don't have to do it today. Just think about it. Here is the part of this story that I don't want to skip over, because every video about narcissistic abuse tends to end in one of two places. Either it stops at the wound, or it jumps too quickly to, and then she healed, and everything was fine. The truth is messier and more interesting. Anna didn't bounce back in 30 days. She didn't download a healing app and wake up renewed. She went through a period that she later described as learning how to take up space again. Small things at first. Laughing out loud without covering her mouth. Telling a story at dinner without watching someone's face to see if she was too much. Calling Olivia. Olivia picked up on the second ring. There's something that happens to empaths after this kind of relationship that's worth talking about, because it's usually left out of the conversation. They become, in certain ways, more powerful than before. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. Because the empath, who has lived through this, has learned exactly what it feels like to lose herself completely. She now knows the early warning signs at a bone-deep level. She knows what it feels like when someone's warmth is a performance and when it's real. She can feel the difference, not just emotionally, but physically, in her body. That kind of hard-won knowledge doesn't make you cynical. It makes you precise. The empath who has been through this and come out the other side doesn't love less. She loves with more clarity. She has better edges. She knows what she's worth, not as an abstract affirmation on a sticky note, but as a lived, tested truth. The strangest moment of recovery wasn't a dramatic breakthrough. It was a Tuesday afternoon, about 8 months after he left. She was making coffee, the same ritual, same kitchen, and she caught herself humming, just humming, absently, while waiting for the coffee to brew. And she stopped, and she thought, when did I stop humming? She couldn't remember exactly, but she remembered starting again. That's what survival looks like from the inside, not a revelation, not a transformation montage. A Tuesday, a cup of coffee, and a melody you forgot you knew. The soul doesn't die. It goes quiet. The work is learning to hear it again. And she listened. If you've watched this far, you're either in this situation, you've been through it, or you love someone who has. I want to leave you with something concrete, not a list of affirmations, but something real. 3 things. First, if you're in a relationship and you cannot remember 3 things that brought you genuine joy before it began, things that have quietly disappeared, that is a signal worth taking seriously. Not proof of anything, a signal. Pay attention to it. Second, an empath's sensitivity is not a flaw to be fixed. It is not the reason this happened to you. You were not too much. You were too generous with someone who mistook generosity for a resource to extract. Those are completely different things. Third, the people who were pushed to the edges of your life while you were in this, they're usually still there. Recovery is, in large part, about finding your way back to them and to yourself. And for the record, no, you don't have to become someone who doesn't feel deeply in order to be safe. The goal isn't to become a narcissist yourself. The goal is just to love yourself with at least a fraction of the same ferocity you've always loved everyone else. Radical concept, I know. Anna still makes coffee every morning. She still feels things too deeply sometimes. She still cries at commercials and picks up on the mood of a room before she walks in. She's still an empath. That doesn't change, and she wouldn't want it to. But she hums now, and she laughs loud, and she doesn't cover her mouth. If any part of this story felt like yours, I hope you remember, the hollowness is not permanent. The silence is not the end. And the version of you that existed before all of this, she's not gone. She's just been waiting for you to make some coffee and finally come back. She's just been waiting. If this video reached you, if it made you think or feel something you needed to feel, please share it with someone. Not because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because somewhere out there, someone is standing in a kitchen with a cooling cup of coffee and they need to know they're not alone in what they're feeling. Drop a comment below with just one word that describes how you felt watching this. I read them, I genuinely do. And if you want to go deeper, next time, we're talking about the recovery side of this in much more detail. Specifically, why empaths often find themselves in multiple versions of the same relationship, and what actually breaks the cycle. Not surface level tips, the real mechanism underneath it all. You don't want to miss that one. I'll see you there.